Aloha, I'm Nahua Gillows, the board chair for Hawaii Island Economic Development Board. Our mission is to provide and promote private sector support and expertise for balanced growth in Hawaii County. Since 2005, one of our major initiatives includes developing and publishing the Comprehensive Economic Development Strategy, commonly known as the CEDS, Hawaii Island's economic roadmap moving forward. We work with other economic development boards on Oahu, Kauai, and Maui and contribute to the overall state of Hawaii comprehensive economic development strategy. Today's Native Hawaiian Perspectives webinar is the second in a series with at least 4 more webinars to follow. These webinars are designed to bring fresh Native Hawaiian voices and new perspectives forward and contribute to today's issues and discussions. Without further ado, today's moderator is Hawaii Island Economic Development Board's Executive Director, Jacqui Hoover. Born and raised on the Big Island, Jacqui currently serves on the Military Native Hawaiian Advisory Council, State of Hawaii Clean Energy Initiative Steering Committee, Hawaii Aerospace Advisory Committee, and numerous other boards, committees, and commissions. Welcome, Jacqui.
Mahalo, Nahua. Thank you, everyone. It's my privilege and pleasure to be here. And before I introduce today's panelists and our discussion, I'd like to take a few minutes to recognize an individual who was very fortunately and graciously on our first panel, our first webinar in February, discussing culture and science. Kalepa Babiyan, Master Navigator, Hokulea Captain. We're so grateful that we had the opportunity to enjoy his comments and the mana'o that he had to share with us. Sadly, we lost Kalepa a few weeks ago. And for those of you who did not have the privilege of viewing the mana'o that Kalepa shared with us, we do record our webinars as they take place. So we will have both that one or both today's available for your viewing, as well as the first one from February available for viewing. So without further ado, we do want to recognize Master Navigator Chad Kalepa Babiyan. I would like to now introduce our panelists for today's discussion. Today's discussion is, can science and culture coexist on Mauna Kea? And I'm going to introduce our panelists and start with Mailani Neal, who is born and raised in Kona, Hawaii Island, and I'm not going to give everyone's bios because those bios are available, and I'd like to make sure we have the conversation time. Mailani Neal, Peter Apo, Kimo Lee, Amber Imai Hong, and Wally Shibashi. These are our 5 panelists today, and we welcome you all and are very grateful for your willingness to participate and share your perspectives with us. So today's session is intended to be more of a talk story than an interview. And so I'll be here, although as moderator, mainly just to prompt conversation and have our 5 participants share their mana'o and perspectives with us. So I want to start with talking about Mauna Kea today. And today, Mauna Kea is home to cultural practitioners, astronomers, hunters, hikers, visitors, stargazers, and locals during snow play. Is there room on the mountain to share all of these activities and uses?
I'll jump in and answer first, if you'd like. I'd like to say that I have fallen in many of those categories, actually. I have been very privileged and lucky to have had the opportunity to work on Mauna Kea for 3 summers as an intern with the East Asian Observatory. I've also ran quite a few of the trails up there. My most recent run on the Mauna was to start at the visitor center and run up to Lake Waiau. And that was the first time I had ever seen the adze quarry and other parts of the Mauna that you don't typically see since when you drive up. And you know, it is beautiful and spacious. And growing up, my family and I, we went up there to play in the snow. So I've been lucky enough to, I've been very lucky to have had multiple experiences with Mauna Kea. And I would like to say that I firmly believe there is much more than enough space for many walks of life to be present on the Mauna and for us to experience her in many different ways.
You know, I'm going to jump in, Amber. From what I've learned, and most of the stuff I've learned was through my parents and growing up as Hawaiian in Waianae. So I don't really have any credentials, you know, as a cultural expert or anything like that, other than what I've lived. And it seems to me that what is consistent in terms of what is traditional and customary is Hawaiians always measured land use by opportunity. Now, when it came to, and you know, Mauna Kea is only one part of an 1,800-mile chain. It's a mountain, it's a huge mountain range. One peak rises up as the highest. What Hawaiians would do in measuring opportunity is they would take the vertical structure and they would measure what opportunities are there for us to improve the quality of life of our villages and our people. Now, take this into consideration. Mauna Kea has, I don't know whether I'm correct, 9 climatic zones, 9 opportunities depending on the climate, the soil condition, etc. And when you look at the history with respect to Mauna Kea on how they utilized it, a 7-mile quarry digging into the mountain, which I understand one of the cultural injury complaints is any digging into the mountain is a cultural injury. Well, how can you say that when you look at the history of how, in this one case, you know, with the, so when we say, is there room for all the activities? I think the answer is initially yes. And then when you start getting into the actual, what are the opportunities? Do they go well together? Probably one of the most complete ahupua'as was like areas like Waikiki, where you had an really rich offshore reef system, so that you go from the top of the mountain to the outer edges of the reef, and we call that what? An ahupua'a. And then when you measure in terms of Waikiki, now the thing Waikiki is they built the Alawai Canal, which totally destroyed the whole concept of this vertical management system. But that would be my response. Yes, there is room. We just need to examine it, and that would be up to, you know, whoever has the governance authority.
Well, the Mauna is a strong Mauna. It can handle all of the activities that is happening currently and in the past on the Mauna. So yes, there is room. The problem I see is trying to educate the general public on the attitude that you have to take when you go up to the summit regions. You have to come in with the proper attitude, with the pono attitude to go up and respect each other's usage on the Mauna. Because the Mauna is strong, and it is a unique opportunity. You know, snow play after the snow melts is when we find the most rubbish. How we can change that attitude of our guests that come up to the Mauna. And hey, when you come up pono. Take your rubbish, be respectful of others, and enjoy the experience. Everything on a Mauna is spiritual. So that's why you have our acclimation period. Get right before you go up to the Mauna. That's my dilemma, how we can help educate going up for the right reason, going up to enjoy and to experience the spiritual answers that you will receive on a Mauna.
Yeah, in all of my experiences, going to the Mauna, working on the Mauna, being in that inversion layer, I spent a lot of time on Mauna Road. It's a lot about Pono being embracing that respect, respecting the land, respecting that spiritual feeling that you get when you're there. It's unlike anywhere else in the world. And it's such a special place. Having that respect and having and connecting with the land. It's so spiritual being there, but it's also a resource, and we need to figure out a good way to balance that. How to be respectful and how to best manage the land. I think that's the careful balance that we're still working towards today.
Yeah,
And I
for
think
me,
that
yeah.
sorry, Kimo, you go.
No, go ahead, Mailani.
I just wanted to follow up with what Amber said about balance. And I think that is something very crucial when we consider the future of what we want our interactions with Mauna Kea to look like. We don't want it to become another Waikiki. Of course, no one at all wants to see that. But I do believe that there is a balance of what could be available to us and also safely available is another a big point. But as well as what can we gain from this opportunity that we are presented with.
Yeah, I was just gonna add, I had a recent experience with Kahukumana, had a retreat on Mauna Kea, and you don't really have, going back to the culture, you don't really have protocols where people stop off, breathe the air in, take a breath, thank the mountain or wherever you're at, and recite your genealogy, and then go on. Everybody just zooming up the hill, zooming back down, and it was really disturbing. So maybe part of the management plan is to incorporate, you stop to get the sheriffs or the rangers tell you what not to do and what to do environmentally, but there needs to be or suggested some protocols on how to absorb and appreciate the place, so you're not just taking from it. Like, it feels like everybody's just, all those uses, we're using it but not appreciating it, from going up for religious purposes to even mud bogging or just driving all over the place, right?
And I agree with you, Brother Kimo, because the Mauna is not a bucket list checklist that you're going to check off just to be able to go up. There is a purpose and a reason for your visit, and we want everyone to enjoy. So they say, yeah, we're going, as astronomers, we're going to be the bad guys because we busting up the mountain. No. The staff I work up with on a Mauna is very respectful of our culture, very respectful of the Aina on the Mauna. So I respect all of the employees who work on the summit region in the telescopes. And how we can relay that message, no matter what we say, no matter what we do, we're still gonna get condemned for what we're doing, for the science we're performing. And it's okay, because we all want the best for the Mauna. But yeah, how we create that attitude of respect for each other and enjoy the summit, that's my goal.
Great comments, all of you, and new perspective in many cases with some of the words that you've given us, very thought-provoking, and I'll certainly be thinking about all that you've said. We started with a brief discussion about the late Navigator Kalepa Babiyan and Hokulea captain. And in our first Native Hawaiian Perspectives webinar, Kalepa discussed how Captain Cook requested on January 19th, 1779, and was given permission to set up Hawaii's first observatory at a sweet potato field adjacent to Hikiau Heiau in Kealakekua Bay. This allowed Captain Cook to astronomically locate Hawaii on a map by pinpointing exact latitudes and longitudes. And history tells us that the sweet potato field was used another 2 times between 1779 and 1793, when Captain George Vancouver made the same request, and was originally denied by the wife of the former kahuna of Hikiau Heiau. But at that time, King Kamehameha had ascended to power, and he chose to assemble the priests, and after serious discussion, they gave Vancouver permission to once again use the sweet potato field to locate an observatory. This is an example of Kamehameha, although deeply vested in his religion and traditions, also accepting the cause of science. King David Kalakaua said, "It will afford me unfeigned satisfaction if my kingdom can add its quota toward the successful accomplishment of the most important astronomical observation of the present century and assist, however humbly, the enlightened nations of the earth in these costly enterprises." So a question that has come up is, does this past history signal a form of consent from our ali'i? And does this signal also that science and culture can and should exist on places that some deem very sacred, like Mauna Kea? And again, meant to be talk stories, so you all speak as the questions or prompts resonate with you.
Come on, people.
I went
Come in,
first
Mayor, the
last time,
first.
so someone else got to go first.
There we go.
You gonna
Okay,
go, Peter?
17. Okay, go, Kimo.
No, it's not. That's one instance, and you can look at it as a subjective interpretation. But you go back to the Makahiki and how did the Makahiki develop? It was very science-based, right? The Hawaiians looked at the environment, the weather, the ocean, the astronomy. They came up with a theory. They tested the theory, and they said, "Hey, look, this is what works, and we're going to apply that theory." So, I mean, I would say yes, that does signal that. It's just that the culture has evolved, yeah, and the culture is who we are. The science is observation, facts, and proofs. So now that the culture has evolved, it's like science is part of the culture, and religion is also another part, and that's where I think the culture is morphed from applying science to practices and customs that are not all aligned. Where back then, when the context, when he made that decision, everybody was under one rule and one understanding, and that's changed now.
So what I take away from this, from 1779, from Kamehameha the Great, is the ali'i's appreciated economic excellence. 1840, Kamehameha the Third, he created public school education. He created that whole system, which was the oldest educational system established by our king. And that was done in Hawaiian language education. 1893, the overthrow, that was the beginning of the end. 3 years later, in 1896, you cannot speak our language. They stopped the Hawaiian language education in the schools. King Kalakaua, now you're moving forward. King Kalakaua established the Hawaiian foreign studies. So our leaders understood the need for education, the need to have academic excellence. Because the glory of God is the intelligence of man. That's what we gotta look at, is when we become more intelligent, we become better children to our Heavenly Father. It's just sure. As fathers, as mothers, as grandparents, we only want the best for our children. We only want the best education to provide the best economic opportunities for our children. It's no different than our Heavenly Father. He wants the same thing. As leaders today, we need to look forward 7 generations. Look what we can provide for our children today to help move the next generation for my great, great, great grandchildren from now. We have to lay the foundation now. And economic excellence was the key that our alii recognized that we have to become. We were the leaders in the world, one of the leading kingdoms and nations of the world when it came to excellence of education.
I think an important take.
People forget, but yeah, to the current system we have today. So, all humans on this earth, we are one species. Even though each culture has very unique and significant legacies, our goal should unify the knowledge and strength of each culture and science to advance humanity instead of fighting and seeking to stand apart. And in fact, as Doug Simons and Kumu Kimura demonstrated in the physics of Paul, in their lecture, is a physics collaboration, culture, science have deep shared understanding of the knowledge. So that's why it's important that we continue to strive and provide the best educational opportunities for our children. We have Mailani, we have Amber as key prime examples of how we can move the Mauna to have Hawaiians take over that Mauna and lead us forward as a nation, as the kingdom. Let's move the Hawaiians forward. It's my manao when it comes to, yes, it is recognized by our li'i how important excellence on wisdom and knowledge that we can gain.
It's hard to separate for me. It's hard for me when I think of Hawaiians and Hawaiian culture to separate science and culture because they were meshed together. The language was different and we didn't have English words and we didn't separate our learning systems. So one of the difficulties is we're trying to figure out some challenges by using a thought process that is fairly foreign to the way the ancient Hawaiians thought, the ones that established the traditions and the custom. They didn't think like that. And all of their thinking, again, had to do with maximizing the natural environment to enhance first of all, the search for knowledge trumped everything. That's the way they lived. And of course, they did have to make certain decisions as to land use. But in terms of in this case, separating out what I think are the kind of a sort of an inadvertent split in the two major issues, which is the telescope as a freestanding issue, and then the management of the mountain itself. governance is a different issue from the telescope. The telescope has to emerge out of the governance issue. It cannot be handled on its own. So getting back to learning systems and figuring out, well, what is that governance system that is supposed to reign, triumphant here in providing a pathway to logically figure this thing out. And in terms of Hawaiians' commitment, where science and culture were really one and the same, in my opinion.
Yeah, to reiterate on what Wally and Peter has said, it's I never thought of them as separate. To me, my ancestors were scientists, they were engineers, they were always pushing to be at the forefront of technology. And it's evident through history that they were respected for that. I feel that there shouldn't be a difference between what we consider traditional science and Western science. I feel like we should be incorporating our Hawaiian culture and perpetuating our Hawaiian culture through science, through interacting with people around the world and teaching them about our culture. Our ancestors were able to survive on these isolated islands for generations. That is something that we can teach the world. It brings all of that together. Like, we need to remain on the forefront. We need to stay and get to that place where Hawaiians are leaders in all fields of science.
I think that a lot of people, when they hear the word science nowadays, they think of the academic types who work at universities and write papers for publications and whatnot. But maybe because I am lucky enough to come from a background of having opportunities to learn about the ways that our ancestors existed on the islands and in this world, science to me was never a how do I say this? It was never a sprint or a race or trying to objectively accomplish something, but instead, I think that from what I've learned about our ancestors and their way of approaching and existing in this world, it was more so becoming in tune with what is going on around us. And I believe that to go back to the prompt about Kamehameha gathering the kahuna to discuss whether to allow the observatory to be placed on the Uwala patch, like, those decisions weren't taken lightly, and they knew that whatever decision they made could have a very big impact on the trajectory of our people as our people continued on in this world that's constantly evolving and changing and growing. And I think, of course, none of us were there, so of course we can't say what the Ali'i's decision would be if they were here today. But I believe that it can most certainly be said that they didn't take decisions like these very lightly, and they were willing to be bold, and they were willing to find a change if it was necessary to keep our people growing and evolving and relevant with what is going on in the world. And I think that a lot of us here today share that vision for our people going forward. And being able to educate young Hawaiians is the first and most crucial step in ensuring that our culture lives on while still existing in this world. There's been many cultures that have gone extinct, their languages are dead, and if we don't if we try to fight the current, we're not going to win. And so I think that you know, we're at another time where very multifaceted decisions have to be made. And you know, now, and that's why it's bringing all of us here together to share our mana'o, almost, you know, kind of a full circle, almost as Kamehameha gathered his kahuna, the people that he trusted their wisdom and their experience. And I think that, you know, when we look at a lot of the pressing issues today where we see science and culture clashing, we're going to have to all come together to make these decisions and be willing to listen to one another, as well as being willing to trust one another, that we can come together and make a decision where, you know, 20, 30 years down the road, we'll look back and we will hopefully say that we made the right decision for our people to progress forward.
Thank you all so much. Very thought-provoking comments. And actually, it's got me thinking about the late US Senator Daniel Akaka, who said, in hula, the ancient kahiko and modern awana not only coexist, but complement one another. The old need not be the enemy of the new. Let Mauna Kea rightfully to become a bridge between our past as Hawaiians and our future. And also, you know, today we hear people who are conflicted about astronomy being on Mauna Kea, and they say it's really not a clash between Western science and Hawaiian cultural beliefs or past and present. They say they love and support science. Of course, they support and love our culture as well. What do you think are the real or underlying issues?
That's no easy task to answer. There are a lot of, you know, there are a lot of underlying issues and grievances. You know, our people have been through a lot, and very recently, you know, sorry. I think that the best thing that we could do is to continue moving forward. You know, a lot of people still feel the grief and the pain from, you know, the illegal overthrow, and I hope that we can all move forward, and we can also ensure that you know, certain issues that are not, or certain issues won't impede our ability to move forward. We shouldn't allow bad things that have happened to prevent us from seeking opportunities. And you know, everyone knows that a lot of these issues were brought to light with the situation of TMT. And you know, at the end of the day, a lot of these issues have nothing to do with this specific telescope at all. They're completely separated, and they should be treated so. I think that, you know, I think that also this is a culmination of many years of certain issues that were sadly not taken care of. As far as on the Mauna, you know, the University of Hawaii has been under big scrutiny of their management of the mountain. but I don't think many people quite understand what they have, the task that they hold. It's very heavy on their shoulders, and I want to commend them for what they have done. I wish that there had been initiatives in the past to improve in areas rather than having that rather than having some of those issues build up and then just kind of reach a boiling point. And so, I think that we should see what's currently going on as an obstacle that we can turn into an opportunity to be better stewards of Mauna Kea, of all the resources that we have available to us. And this is a lesson that we can learn from. And so something that Uncle Kimo pointed out earlier was, there isn't necessarily some sort of cultural protocol for people going to Mauna Kea. And that's something that has been lacking. And that should be one of our forefront issues, is to figure out what is the most effective and pono way that we can have a cultural presence on Mauna Kea for people who may not be familiar with our culture. And that will in turn kind of, I think for me, I think that the greatest importance is to perpetuate our culture. And so this is some of the ways that we can do that, is to, as the senator said, to use Mauna Kea as a bridge between our past and the future. Sorry for going on so long.
But that was awesome.
Great, Melanie. Yeah.
I do really agree. That resonates really well with me. That what you said. I think that a lot of it. There's a lot of hurt. We are a very hurt community. There's a lot of things that are wrong and that need to be fixed. I don't think stopping a telescope is going to fix any of those things. It's not going to help our keiki get educated. It's not going to help bring our culture to the forefront of the rest of the world. We need to think globally as our ancestors did. Like hula is perpetuated throughout the world. It's a great way for people to be introduced to our culture. And it's a great parallel. We need to be the leaders in science. That way there can be more people who understand our culture, and we do need to do a better job of educating our visitors to Mauna Kea when they come. We need to figure out that balance on how to be more pono, how to treat the mountain with more respect. And I think all of that kind of factors in.
And let me just add this in. I think Senator Akaka was going in the right direction. I don't want to speak for him, but I think he looked at the future, and we're trending in the wrong way. We went from the most literate nation in the world, implementing electricity or electric lights, one of the first countries, and now we're the highest incarcerated, lowest educated, lowest health, and looking back, I don't think he wanted to look back, because if you look back on the overthrow, it was a generation or two from my grandfather's generation, and you're down to me, that would be four or five generations. And then you go down to my grandkids, that's 6 generations of activism. And when you have activism with no solution, the culture is going to die. That's just my feeling. We got to look forward. Don't look back. I mean, Amber was part of a space launch program we had that just got killed. I mean, she got bullied, brutalized. It was brutal. It was sad. It was another thing that stopped. We're stopping the space launch. We're stopping the telescope, or whatever we're stopping. But there's no solution. What's the alternative? Where do we go from here? If you stop it, what comes next? And that's the I think the problem or the environment we're in is like we're stopping these things, but what is the future? Where do we go from here? So that's my 2 cents on that.
Kimo, you raise probably the most fundamental issue confronting Hawaiians and how we're moving forward. We are the victims of a continuum of transgenerational trauma. We have never recovered totally as a society from the overthrow, from the loss of our language, from all of that. We've made a great recovery in a lot of the cultural stuff. Okay? So Mauna Kea springs, and there are other issues too that springs out of this transgenerational trauma, and the fact that we've kind of been dumbed down, you know, so that the intellect and the flow of ideas and the ability to interact with each other on a system-wide level, on a cultural level, is really difficult. So what's happened, if you really think about it, I'm 82. We are more tribal today than we were when I was a kid. Hawaiians were much more united, much more together, much more, you know, like with my parents and all of their friends. And as each generation came along, we started to, partly because we got to be so smart that we all decided that we're gonna have our own canoe club, right? I mean, you know, every time somebody got unhappy with a canoe club, they went out and started another canoe club. And the impact of that is that we cut down all the trees to make a canoe out of a hull. So now there's no more core trees that you can build a canoe out of, and they had to go to Alaska to build the second hokulea. Anyway, so this cultural thing is really fundamental. So that's one of the difficulties in trying to resolve not just the Mauna Kea issue, the TMT, and a lot of the other issues. Is this thing that you point out, you know. When it comes to science now, and here I'll go back to the science thing. Let's look at the as an example of science. The Kumulipo, okay. Darwin's theory of creation. Years before Darwin was even born, right? All of that biological development that came through from the amoeba to us coming up through the ocean and then land animals. Now, is that not science? How did they figure all that out? I mean, there's got to be some science in the culture, because that's a hell of a deal, you know. And I realize Kumulipa is a family-generated thing, but still, the information and the ladder that they built in the rise of life forms was amazing. Another amazing thing to me, the concept of a fish pond. The basis of fish pond was not just fish. They were dealing with photosynthesis. They understood how the sun hit the water, and as it got deeper and deeper, there are different opportunities to grow certain kinds of not only animals, sea animals, but vegetation. Wow, that's really so. So when we say science versus culture, I really have a trouble, you know, trying to have a dialogue with that, with like I'm trying to oppose something. Of course, none of us oppose science. We are science.
That's great. And again, such thought-provoking comments and insights. The mana'o is wonderful.
Hey, Jacqui.
Yes.
This is being recorded, right?
Yes, this is being recorded.
Can you send that clip where Peter's agreeing with me to John DeFries, please?
Oh, most certainly.
All right, that'll make my day. Thank you.
And again, you know, those who didn't see the first webinar, we do have that recorded as well. But from that first webinar, Kalepa Babiyan said, I firmly believe that the highest level of desecration rests in actions that remove the opportunities and choices from the kind of future our youth can own. The quest for knowledge on the summit of Mauna Kea is a sacred mission that takes place on a mountain considered sacred by many. The benefit of tomorrow's generations here in Hawaii and across the globe. Mauna Kea, like life, is sacred, and we need to proceed with the important work of ensuring our future. Let's look to Mauna Kea and continue a synergy of mountains, exploration, and stars. And I've been listening carefully to all that you've been talking about, and how do we, in Kalepa's words, honor the past culturally and move into the future so that in places like Mauna Kea, as all of you have said, both culture and science coexist? And I did want to let everyone know we are coming up much too soon on our closing. It's 12:45, and so not trying to rush anyone, but I can tell by the comments we're getting from the audience, as well as from myself and everything I've heard from you, that everyone wants as much of your mana'o as possible before we do end.
So I'll jump in really quickly here. I was very fortunate to have worked with Kalepa for the past 5 or 6 years now. And about a month before his passing, he and I, as well as someone that many people are familiar with, Sam King, the three of us came together to form a new hui to specifically focus on getting these educational opportunities for our keiki with astronomy. And evolving to other space field sciences too. And I think many of us know that Kalepa held a master's degree in education, and so I think it's safe to say that Kalepa had vision. And I think the best thing that we could do to honor his memory is to pursue his vision. And part of that vision was his integration of cultural knowledge and scientific knowledge, and how they exist together already in all of us, as has been said today, that there isn't a clashing, and that science and culture are not fighting for presence in Hawaii and within our people. And so I think that going forward, we can hopefully open up dialect to share our perspectives, to continue sharing our perspectives, and to teach our keiki that there isn't this divide between science and culture. And some of that will lie on the shoulders of people like myself and Amber and Makana and Tyler, to throw them out there too. It's gonna be on our shoulders to make sure that we show the next generation by example that there isn't this conflict of science and culture, that we exist as a meshing of science and culture.
Yeah, I know from conversations I had with Uncle Kalepa that a lot of what he was very focused on was integrating or perpetuating that integration of science and culture, traditional science with modern science, all of those things. We need to continue to do that and to keep pushing forward. Our ancestors used the tools that were available to them, and they utilized them to the best of their ability. They didn't use the wrong tools for the wrong job. They knew how to survive, and they knew how to keep the people going, how to keep the culture going. They were very well recognized amongst other cultures who would run over people who are, you know, brown people like us. You know, they were well respected, and I feel like that speaks volumes to how our leaders in the past, how our ancestors presented themselves. And I feel like just perpetuating our culture and through science is a great way to honor Uncle Kalepa.
Yeah, Kalepa was a fierce advocate for astronomy, TMT. I mean, to carry that on. But what Peter was saying about the division, I mean, I think if you go back in history, you had the Coup Petition, and according to his historical notes, 95% of the population, the Hawaiian population, signed the Coup Petition. But I don't think if you look back on it, they would say, stop everything. They would want us to, and I'm speaking for my vision, my beliefs. My daughter and parts of my family don't believe that. And that's where we got to kind of bridge that gap and figure out, it's not science and culture or religion or beliefs or practices. It's how do we come together and solve these issues? And that's a bigger issue.
And that's happening right now today. And, you know, with these COVID situations, you take the time, you plant your tree, you know, you malama that tree, you nurture that tree, you can taste the fruit, you can taste the sweetness. And you wake up and it's gone. Somebody went take them. Somebody took your fruit from your tree. Hawaiians by nature are giving people. We aloha everybody. It's our nature. But there is a point in time is enough is enough. We're experiencing that now already, and it's going to happen. UH never caused the overthrow. Astronomy didn't participate in the overthrow. But we're guilty by association because we're part of the state. And that's the reality. We're always going to be guilty of that. It's about poverty. We're facing poverty issues with the Hawaiian people. From our most productive, the most rich society we had as a kingdom. We were rich people. You're not Hawaiian unless you have land. The broken promises are real. 9,000 out of 30,000 people waiting for land. 100 years of tears is real. And we're reaping that now for the failure of the federal government, the failure of the state to provide Hawaiians with land. You're not Hawaiian unless you can provide for your family. You're not going to be all doctors and lawyers and scientists. No. You can be a nice little farmer and provide food that sustain your family for the years ahead. We're missing that point. We are experiencing the poverty of our people, the lack of respect for the host culture. Years, 100 years, Hawaiian Homes Act been in place. The Admissions Act is all part of this illness that we're facing. We have to heal that. And we're on the verge of trying to heal this and provide economic opportunities. And we achieve that economic opportunities by achieving educational excellence. And we have to move that forward and protect the future of our children. Hard to forgive when it keeps being slapped in your face when you wake up in the morning and your ono banana tree is empty. You know, hard to provide for your family when you see that emptiness. You cannot even plant one. Kalo plant because you no more land. So I feel for my people that waiting 100 years now waiting. So what we can do, so we have to understand the dilemma that our people face. We have to understand the have-nots. We're being invaded by people that they have plenty of money that they can put up the gate and not allow us to go to the ocean. They can put up the gate and not allow us to catch the the pu'a no Mauna. Nah, already. We gotta share everything. We have to understand the needs and wants of our Hawaiian people. More.
Well, yeah, Kimo, I think you and Wally bring up, again, really fundamental questions that does have a direct impact on Mauna Kea style decisions, and that is the absence of leadership. It's we don't seem to have any kind of a center of gravity of leadership that can provide us with even just having a civil dialogue.
Yeah.
And I'm getting yelled at and screamed at and stuff like that. I took some gas early on. 2 years ago. Whoa. But I'm still alive. So, but yeah, it's, again, we're not addressing the question directly, but it is fundamental to the elusiveness of a solution is the leadership vacuum.
And again, I am so intrigued and appreciative for all of the mana'o we've heard today. I wish this conversation could go on, but in the interest of everyone's time, being respectful and doing this in a Pono way, we do have to draw to a close. So I'm going to turn this back over to Nahua Gilos with my sincere mahalo for all of you who have shared your mana'o and also for all of you who have joined us today.
Mahalo, Jacqui.
Mahalo.
Mahalo, everyone. I hope you found today's comments and perspectives from Native Hawaiians Peter Apo, Amber Imai Hong, and Wally Ishibashi, Kimo Lee, and Mailani Neal interesting and informative. Mahalo to our panelists for sharing their mana'o. We recorded today's presentation and we'll be sending you an email with the link to the YouTube special that you can share with others. We will be hosting another 4 webinars with different panelists, including next month's webinar, Native Hawaiian Perspectives, exploring the history and importance of a military presence at Puhakuloa. Let's all work together to make this a better place for our keiki. I look forward to welcoming you to the next episode of Native Hawaiian Perspectives in May. Have a great day.
Mahalo.
Hello.
Aloha.
Mahalo, everyone.